This is firstofthebike.com. We've got two of the best triathletes here in Chris Legh and Luke Bell. We'll be chatting to them about all sorts of things going on in the triathlon world at the moment. And guys, the first thing I wanted to ask you was the 70.3 racing concept, which has just been evolving over the last couple of years. And Chris, you've been one of the masters of this distance. And has it really changed the way we think about racing triathlon?
Personally, it came in a perfect opportunity for me. I think it's more achievable for the masses. For me, coming to the end of my triathlon career, I really didn't have an option to sort of satisfy my sponsorship requirements and things like that. So the fact I could race 70.3 was perfect. And you go overseas now, and even seeing the results on the weekend in Geelong, huge participation. It looked like a world event. And that's what they're sort of replicating overseas, so it's huge. The participation numbers are up. So,
previously they did have an Ironman series where they used to run Ironmans around the world. I remember the likes of Ray Browning and Tinley would get around the world just racing these things. And now I guess it's something like that you can get involved in as well, and just constantly be racing, and the opportunity for success for your sponsors as well is big.
Yeah, I think so. Like, it allows that bit of a step up for the short course guys as well. But racing Ironman predominantly, you can't do too many throughout the year. You're looking at two, maybe three a year. So the 70.3 series has been fantastic for that. In terms of general public as well, like you look at the participation rate, and we've never had anything like that in Australia ever before. And I think it's mainly due to that. The athletes can qualify now to go off to World Championships at the 70.3 distance. So it allows them to make an Australian team, race somewhere internationally. But in terms of global wise, it's been a phenomenal thing.
How many can you do Ironmans in a year? How many can you get out?
You've really got to look at what you want to achieve in them. I think you look back at the old days, and you're still chatting to the greats of the sport. They still say really only one a year, ideally, and that being Kona. Prepare the rest of the year. Your rest of the year spend time training for it. But then you look at other guys. You've got some nutters out there who will try and do 5 or 6. There's quite a few now that will try and do 5 or 6 Ironmans a year, which it does. It takes a lot out of the body. Myself, I'm still only doing 2 a year, and I'm going into my 6 coming on 7 years of doing the sport, and I don't think I'll consider doing more than 2 a year for another 2 or 3 years.
There's an old rule of thumb that my old coach used to talk to me about: 17 good marathons in your lifetime, and that's about it. Is that sort of something that just can't happen, or is it sort of...
It's funny, I think, like Luke said, all the legends of the sport, whether it's Dave Scott, he pretty much did 1 a year, would sort of dabble in Japan, and Mark Allen would always do Hawaii and did Nice, which was, you're looking at a 5-6 hour race. I think you've only got a certain number of races. I think physically you could probably do more. I think mentally, if you want to win those races, there's almost a switch, and you can turn that off pretty quickly. And talking to Belinda Granger last year, I think she did 6 within a 365-day period. She got to Hawaii, the most important race of the year, and she just couldn't turn it on. You just don't want to hurt, you don't want to suffer that much. So you've got to be careful, you've got to balance it.
Are there too many Ironman races in the world at the moment? If we think about the amount, does it mean the talent pool's spread a lot more thin?
Well, it's sort of a hard thing. You look at the Ironman races in the world, and every race seems to sell out. So obviously, you're looking at that respect. There is not too many in the world, as long as the numbers keep filling. In terms of my thoughts on the matter, I say yes. Years ago, you used to be able to go to an Ironman, and if you actually won an Ironman event, it was quite prestigious. Where now you can nearly chase an Ironman. There's that many worldwide now that if you pick and choose, you'll be able to come up with an Ironman win somewhere. But then at the end of the day, mentally, are you going to be happy? I've always chosen not to take the easy option, as you dare say, and chase a race. I've always thought to be the best, you've got to race the best. So hence, I'll stick to my few races. But yeah, it's one of those 50-50 questions, I think.
Do you pick them, the races? Do you take a look at the start list and think, maybe not this one?
I think you go through that phase, but it's funny, when I was racing Ironman, and especially sort of around Luke's age, I was sort of is quoted as being the most talented guy not to have won an Ironman. And that was, I think it took me 6 years to finally win a race. And Luke's the same. And you could look at all these athletes who have Ironman victories, and they go off to Southeast Asia and sort of off-season times, and they'll go and pick up a title. And Luke goes down as one of the most talented guys not to have won an Ironman. And that's because he races Australia or race New Zealand. He takes on the best guys in the world. And At times I chose not to do that, but I always seem to come up against the Peter Reeds and Norman Stadlers and people like that. But at the end of the day, when you take a victory over sort of that calibre of field, it's worth the effort and worth the wait.
And talking about, I guess, racing and Ironman, it's evolving so quickly. You mentioned the wetsuit, and technology is something that triathletes just absolutely love. They just get into their technology. And have we gone crazy with the technology and what we use?
Gone crazy, or triathletes always been crazy?
It's always has seemed to be.
As you said, it's, triathletes love a thing, and as soon as I think the first set of aero bars were chucked on a set of bars in the Tour de France, I think the next season in triathlon, I think there would have been thousands of people out there with them on, and they love a gimmick. I think you can go too far. It still comes back to training. You can have heart rate monitors, you can have wattage meters, but some days those parameters can be way off, and it really comes back to how you feel. And you chat to the likes of like Paula Newby-Fraser and that, and she was saying in her early days, just run from aid station to aid station as hard as she possibly could, and then walk the aid station, fuel up, and then run from the aid station hard again. And she was always like a 3:05 runner sort of thing. So you think nowadays with all the technology, the guys, it is a completely different race nowadays in saying that, but you'd think that the times would advance heaps, but it still comes back to the physical body and what it's capable of.
And if we took all your technology toys away from you, Chris, and lined you up in a race, and how do you think you'll fare next to the guys who have it?
I think I'd go okay. It's funny. I mean, we've always been perceived that way, and we probably always will. But at the end of the day, you can sit and coach people, or you do these presentations at races, and everyone's talking about wattage. And I mean, the fact that these tools have only been around for a few years, it's like I did my fastest race the first time I did Ironman, and it was all just unknown, and I think I bonked 3 times, and I just had more coke and just more goose, and just kept going. And at the end of the day, if you get really involved in the race and you push hard, then you get the results. And I think sometimes we're just too preoccupied with heart rates and calories and wattage, and sometimes just let it go.
You look back to the old days, and like even the old runners. Training now is very similar to training back then. You do your long session, you do a solid long tempo session, and you do a speed session. Now we've just got things to tell us how quick, how hard, and that we're doing these. But in theory, it's exactly the same as what they're doing 60 years ago, when whoever Bannister or whoever broke the 4-minute mile, doing the same stuff. It's just now we've got something in front of us to keep us entertained, really.
Or probably to tell us to slow down.
Yeah.
You better have a rest day. Yeah. It's like, to me, it's like, I mean, you got to rest. It's all about stress and rest. But I think now people are always overanalyzing things and backing off, and probably spend half the day writing their logbooks down. Some of the stuff I've seen, I'm like, just go out and train.
Yeah.
So we're overcomplicating it, aren't we? I mean, are we putting too much emphasis on technology and writing stuff down? And like you said, the old school guys would just get out there and hammer it out and race how they feel. I remember Spot Anderson, who won an Australian Triathlete of the Year back in the 80s. He just trained how he felt.
But then you look at it too, the sport's evolved so much, and cycling in itself's evolved so much. You head out on Beach Road here in Melbourne, and you get back to the coffee shop, and all you hear about is average speeds, how quick we were going, how quick we got back from Mordialloc to St Kilda, and
like, the ceramic bearings, and I think equipment, it's got its place, but I think overanalyzing and the science of it gets a little too complicated at times. But if you can find some free wattage and wheels and aero bars and lighter bikes, then go for it.
And now that you're full-time professionals, you guys have been at this game for a while, you're making your life living out of being a full-time professional. The pressure that you guys feel to race to earn the living, is that always been around, or is it something that you just worry about your race and everything else will come from that?
I think it's, you go through different phases, and I think sometimes you stress too much about it. And when you go out into a race, you can only do what you do. And it's like, well, I've trained this hard in swimming, I've done this on the bike, I can do this in the run. You can't alter it with stressing. And I mean, I've gone through that. I probably had my worst phase of racing for a year and a half, because I just probably trained harder than I should have and was just complicating things. And I think now, as I get to the end of my career, it's like, well, I've got to enjoy what I'm doing. And the fact that I've, I think, accepted that, then I just race a lot better.